And it is tragic to see the loss of confidence in the American people, in the Department of Justice, and in the FBI. I would note, I don't think there's an institution in America who has lost more respect from the American people than the FBI has in the last 4 years. That is a grotesque violation of the obligation of the Department of Justice and the FBI. So I want to start with just a very simple: if you are confirmed as Attorney General, will you pledge to fairly and faithfully uphold the law regardless of party?
So help me God.
Amen. Look, and I want to be clear for folks at home. I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a Department of Justice that follows the damn law. And I think the American people do too. That shouldn't be too much to expect.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Congress Lens. I'm Audrey. If you just watched that snippet, you can already tell this hearing was intense. Senator Ted Cruz did not hold back when responding to the line of questioning directed at Pam Bondi. Whether you agree with Ted Cruz or not, you have to admit he came prepared and he came ready to push back. What stood out to me right away was how Ted Cruz flipped the narrative. Senator Mazie Hirono framed the question around whether Pam Bondi would target political enemies if asked. Ted Cruz argued that this is not some imaginary scenario. According to Ted Cruz, that kind of weaponization already happened under President Joe Biden's administration. That is a bold counter. Today, I'm breaking down why I think Ted Cruz made a strong case, why Pam Bondi's answers mattered, and what this exchange says about the bigger debates surrounding the Department of Justice. If you enjoy honest and thoughtful political reactions, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Congress Lens, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into it.
General Bondi, welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
your long career in public service, and thank you for your willingness to take on this incredibly important office. You know, I have to say, I don't know that there is a more important position in this new administration than the position to which you have been nominated, Attorney General of the United States. I thought the exchange just a moment ago with Senator Hirono was illustrative. She asked you how you would respond if the president asked you to target his political enemies. It's rather striking because it's not a hypothetical. It has happened over the last 4 years. And I think perhaps the most tragic legacy of the Biden-Harris administration has been the politicization and the weaponization of the United States Department of Justice. And we don't need to ask hypothetically because Joe Biden publicly mused and allowed the New York Times to report it, calling on Merrick Garland, why will he not prosecute Trump more quickly? And Merrick Garland, sadly, he sat in that chair and promised to be apolitical, and he broke that promise almost the instant he walked into the Department of Justice. If you look on the west pediment of the Supreme Court of the United States, just above the entrance, there's a simple yet profound four-word phrase: equal justice under law. We have seen over the last 4 years a Department of Justice that systematically targeted the political opponents of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that systematically protected his friends and allies. And it is tragic to see the loss of confidence in the American people, in the Department of Justice, and in the FBI. I would note, I don't think there's an institution in America who has lost more respect from the American people than the FBI has in the last 4 years. That is a grotesque violation of the obligation of the Department of Justice and the FBI. So I want to start with just a very simple question. If you are confirmed as Attorney General, will you pledge to fairly and faithfully uphold the law regardless of party?
So help me God.
Amen. Look, and I want to be clear for folks at home. I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a Department of Justice that follows the damn law. And I think the American people do too. That shouldn't be too much to expect. Now, I'm grateful to President Trump for nominating you. I think on any objective level, you're clearly qualified for this position. You have been a prosecutor for decades. You have been the elected Attorney General of the state of Florida, the third largest state in America, for 8 years. Let me ask you, in terms of your practice, how many criminal cases over the course of your career have you personally handled?
Handled thousands.
How many of those were before a jury?
Hundreds. I don't want to overstate, but hundreds. I was in a courtroom for many years. I tried 4 when I was an intern, jury trials. I think you had to try at least 20 in misdemeanor before you went to felony. Then you were in court every day, and I was also lead trial attorney for many years trying many cases. So.
And how many of those cases would have been before a judge?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds as well, but hundreds before a jury, I would assume.
And as Attorney General of Florida, how many lawyers did you supervise roughly?
Approximately 400, Senator.
Now, I also want to clarify something. During the course of this hearing, several Democrat senators have referred to you as President Trump's, quote, personal lawyer. Now I don't believe that is an accurate characterization. As I understand it, you represented President Trump as a White House special advisor during his first impeachment trial. Is that correct?
Within Office of White House Counsel, yes, Senator.
And is working within the White House counsel's office different than representing Donald J. Trump individually as his personal lawyer?
Absolutely.
How's it different?
You're working for the government. You're working for the Office of White House Counsel. You're not representing him in his personal capacity.
And so you have not represented him in his business affairs, in his personal life, or in any of the criminal trials he has faced?
No, Senator.
And you know, when it comes to weaponization, it's worth noting that in more than 2 centuries of our nation's history, no president had previously been indicted, no president had previously been prosecuted until the Biden-Harris White House came along. And in the last 4 years, we've seen Donald Trump indicted and prosecuted not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 separate times.
And 2 assassination attempts, Senator.
I have to say, Javert from Les Mis would be chagrined at the efforts of Democrats to do anything possible to take him down. And I believe the real target in this was not President Trump, but it was the American people, that these prosecutions were brought because partisan prosecutors were terrified that the American people would do exactly what they did in November of 2024 and vote to reelect Donald J. Trump.
By 77.3%. Million Americans, 77.3 million Americans.
Will you commit every day as Attorney General to follow the law, to follow the Constitution, to uphold the rule of law without favor and without regard to the partisan position of any criminal defendant?
Yes, Senator.
That's what we should all expect from an Attorney General. Thank you.
We'll now recess for 30-minute lunch break. That means we'll be back.
After watching the full hearing, here's my honest take. First, Ted Cruz completely reframed the conversation. Senator Mazie Hirono asked Pam Bondi what Pam Bondi would do if President Donald Trump asked her to go after political enemies. Instead of treating it as a future possibility, Ted Cruz argued that the country has already seen politicization under President Joe Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland. That was a strategic move. Ted Cruz did not ignore the concern about abuse of power. Ted Cruz acknowledged it, but redirected the focus to what Ted Cruz sees as recent history. Second, the phrase equal justice under law was powerful. When Ted Cruz referenced those words from the Supreme Court building, it felt intentional. Ted Cruz made it clear that the Department of Justice should not belong to Republicans or Democrats. It should follow the Constitution. When Ted Cruz said, I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a department that follows the law, that felt relatable. A lot of Americans just want fairness. Third, Ted Cruz directly addressed the claim that Pam Bondi was President Donald Trump's personal lawyer. Several Democratic senators used that label. Ted Cruz walked through the facts. Pam Bondi worked in the White House counsel's office during impeachment proceedings. Pam Bondi did not represent President Donald Trump in business matters or criminal trials. That distinction matters. Ted Cruz also spent time highlighting Pam Bondi's qualifications. Decades as a prosecutor. Hundreds of jury trials. Oversight of roughly 400 lawyers as Florida's Attorney General. That was not just flattery. It was a reminder that Pam Bondi has real experience in law enforcement leadership. Now let's talk about the larger argument. Ted Cruz said that the indictments of President Donald Trump were unprecedented and politically motivated. That is obviously a controversial position. But Ted Cruz's core message was about trust. Ted Cruz argued that confidence in the Department of Justice and the FBI has declined because of perceived selective enforcement. Whether viewers agree or disagree, Ted Cruz consistently returned to one principle. The law should apply equally to everyone. What stood out to me most is that Ted Cruz framed this as an institutional issue. Ted Cruz was not just defending President Donald Trump. Ted Cruz was arguing that public faith in the justice system is at stake. And Ted Cruz positioned Pam Bondi as someone who pledged under oath to follow the Constitution without partisan bias. Pam Bondi's answer was straightforward. Pam Bondi committed to upholding the law regardless of party. That clarity mattered. In my view, Ted Cruz successfully shifted the debate from hypothetical fears to what Ted Cruz views as real concerns about past actions. Ted Cruz made the case that restoring trust in the Department of Justice starts with leadership that promises equal enforcement under the law. Now I want to hear from you. Did Ted Cruz make a convincing argument? Or do you think the Democratic senators were right to press hard on those questions? Drop your thoughts below. This is Congress Lens. I'm Audrey. I'll see you in the next breakdown.